Hello, everyone. Great to see you guys. Depending on when you're watching this, welcome to April already. I guess you're probably not watching it in the past, but you might be watching it in the future. So it's April right now. I can't believe that 2023 is a quarter over already. So we've got a lot to get done yet this year. So let's jump into it with some questions. Okay. So, first question is from Alex Wilkins. Should overtime be optional or mandatory? I have a landscaping business here in PA. I am anticipating a really busy year, and sometimes I have a light crew and want to know how to get the most work out of them when I don't quite have enough team. What are ways I can get them to work more hours, and do I have to pay overtime? Great question. So first thing that jumps to mind when it comes to overtime for me is, does overtime fit into your profit schedule, basically, right? Like, can you afford to pay overtime? Depending on what your gross profit margin is on jobs, that would really be a determining factor if you can afford to pay people more than what you would normally pay them. Do you have to pay overtime? Probably yes. I'm assuming that they're actual W-2 employees, and you probably do need to pay them overtime. If they are not W-2 employees, you're probably they're 1099 employees, which they probably aren't 1099 employees, whether you call them that or not. From a legal perspective, they are W-2 given the type of business you're in. I would assume, especially if you have them working that many hours, that they're working overtime. So. So anyway, so point is that yes, you do have to pay overtime, and the question is, can you afford to pay overtime? So I would first ask that question. If the answer is yes, we can afford to pay overtime. That's just built into how our business model works. That's fine. Then it just becomes then it's just a culture thing and understanding thing that the people you're hiring know that there's going to be overtime expected as part of what they're signing up for. If you don't have people that are able or interested in doing that, then you're going to need to cycle some of them out and have some other folks come in. So I think it is fair to, if the expectation is that there's going to be a lot of overtime, to let people know that and to know that that's what they're signing up for. Some people love overtime. They love it because they get extra money and they get extra hours. It's like a total win for the people that are into it. So it shouldn't be hopefully too hard. Unless, of course, that overtime is going into like crazy, like I'm thinking like going from 40 hours to 50 hours to 60 hours, not from like 80 plus. So I guess that would be another question I would have is when you're talking about overtime, how much overtime are you talking about for your folks? So yes, and then should it be overtime be optional or mandatory? Well, if you don't have enough people, it has to be mandatory, I guess, right? If it's the people, if you're only going to keep a tight crew and pay everybody overtime, I think the expectation is that everybody works till it's done. But again, that's like a culture thing, and that's a thing of explaining it to everybody on the onset and knowing that's what they're signing up for. So I would have that conversation with everyone if you haven't. All right, next question. Kelly Killingsworth. How do I solve the problem of spreading myself out too thin with projects in the construction world? I'm a federal, state, and local contractor and subcontractor for the construction industry, specifically the dirt world. I have projects coming up as the weather gets better. As of right now, the work is slow. I'm afraid as I keep bidding projects that I will spread myself way too thin. I will be in a situation very soon where I am anticipating that I will have an absolute need to hire fast. At the same time, I'm assuming that I will need to fire fast also. My company is small for now. This year is projected to earn a rough gross of $350,000 if I can complete all the projects. I have interviews scheduled next week, and as of right now, I am the only employee. Okay, well, it sounds like you're going in the right direction. You're thinking about hiring. That's great. So as I will suggest, as I often do, when you talk about hiring somebody, you do need to know how long is it going to take before that person is profitable for you. It sounds like you've got a lot of work lined up, which is great. I would be clear on that you've set your gross margins properly to afford to have a person doing the work and not just you. That's a mistake I've seen people make before, where they, when they're doing all the work, they don't really count themselves as an employee. They just sort of like look at like, cool, I'm making money and I'm doing the work. But then as soon as they have to start paying someone, their margin drops so low that all of a sudden they're not making money, or they're just not making as much as they thought. So I would say first be clear on what your business model is and how it all fits together, that as you hire people that you can actually get some profitability out of it still. And if all those numbers kind of make sense, you're absolutely right about hiring fast and firing fast. Actually, this just happened to me the other day. I hired two people. They were kind of a duo for kind of some marketing and communication sort of stuff. And when we got into it, I hired them, and we started on Monday, and they were fired by Friday. Not that they were bad people or anything like that, but it just became very clear that they were not what needed to be in that role by the end of the week, and so move them out fast. So that's good. But as far as spreading yourself too thin, look, that's a hard transition to make. It's always difficult. Whenever you go from a one-man show to now you're going to be managing people, if you're able, my suggestion would be to get yourself to strictly management as quickly as possible so that you aren't doing any direct labor work. The hardest part, in my experience, is when you're straddling that line of you're behind the counter, driving the truck, doing the graphic design, whatever it is that you do, you're doing the thing, but then you're also trying to manage other people at the same time. The longer that lasts, the harder it is. Now, you might find a little group that it works out great, and you've got 2 or 3 people, you and a few others, and you can do the direct work, and they just kind of do the direct work, and you're like a little improv jazz band that kind of everybody just sort of does stuff and it works. That's fine. But if you're really going to try to scale whatever it is you're doing, getting yourself into like a strictly management position while everyone else is doing the direct labor, kind of making that delineation as quickly as possible, that helps avoid this spreading yourself too thin. It's usually the hours in the direct work that you do that eats up the most time. So the sooner you can kind of pull yourself away from that as much as possible is kind of the way to go. And that just takes planning and knowing what your budgets are and how much revenue you need and being able to jump up there as fast as possible. So yeah, knowing those numbers are important. Next question, Josh Ciramintaro. If I want to put a plan together to quit my full-time job and be a full-time business owner, what are things I should take into consideration? I'm a partner in a new company, not much revenue, but I want to put a plan together with milestones so once I reach a certain milestone, I can quit. What milestones would you want to achieve to quit the job and go all in? Great question, Josh. So first I want to say that this is not unique to the transition that you're making. The transition you're making is from a full-time job into generating your salary or your income from a business. That same scenario exists whenever a company that already exists, maybe that company's doing $10 million a year, and now they have to shift gears from one particular product line to a whole other product line. There's a certain transition that happens. So my point is that just because it's a transition as a one person going from a full-time to a business, that scenario unfolds over and over again in your businesses, especially as you guys get bigger. You'll see it over and over. So you can treat it the exact same way as you would at any stage of a business. So my feeling is that from my own experience, when I do stuff, I try to be all in on it because I realize that if I get distracted by having to kind of like focus over here while also trying to make something happen over here, the trying to make something happen thing, like it doesn't get the focus that it needs, and it takes longer or just doesn't happen because I'm not focused on it. So it's okay. It's cool to say, hey, when we've got this milestone, great. Well, the question is, what are you doing action-wise to achieve that milestone? The milestone doesn't really matter. I'm sure the milestone is clearly when you can replace your income from full-time employee to a full-time business owner. There's a clear milestone. That's pretty easy. But the question is, how quickly can you get there? And what are the specific activities? I would outline those. What are the specific activities that will get me from point A to point B? And then how much time is it going to take me, and how much focus and energy is it going to take me to do those activities to achieve that milestone? That's the question. Because then at that point, you'll know, okay, it's going to take me this much focus and this much time and energy where I need to be 100% focused on this every single day. I can't be distracted by my full-time job. So therefore, I need to be able to take off 6 months with no revenue, no income, so I can build this thing up. And that's going to cost me, I don't know how much money you make a month, $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 a month times 6, whatever it is. That's the dollar amount that you have to fill to buy yourself that time. That's the investment into your time, so you can spend the time to grow the business to where you need it to be. Now that's very linear, like on-off, binary kind of situation. It doesn't have to be as hard as that, but that's kind of what you're going towards. Yeah, it's knowing how you can spend your time and how long it's going to take you before you make the money you need to make in the new business. All right, next question. Ricardo Delgado. Is being a barber or owning a barbershop what I should do long term? I've owned my barbershop for 3 years and I'm making a living, but I can see that there's only so much money to be made in a shop as a barber, and I was wondering what you think. If I wanted to make 10 times as much, do I stay in this industry or do I transition to another industry like consulting or something else? What would you do if it were you? This is an excellent question, Ricardo. People don't think enough about this sort of thing when they're setting up their business or they're going into business or they're already in a business. You have to realize what the potential of your business is, right? And does that align with what your goals are? If your goals are to make 10 times the amount of money that you're currently making, I guarantee you will not be able to do that in the same way that you're doing your business now. There's absolutely no way that you're going to get 10 times more people through there. It just logistically and physically won't be possible. So if your priority is to keep the status quo and make money and do the things you're doing and everything's fine, great, just keep doing that. Maybe make some incremental improvements, increase prices, do some things like that. But you're not going to get a 10 times change. 10 times change will require some sort of gear shift, like you're suggesting. Shifting into something, you have to look at your business model, and you can stay in the same industry. Like you're saying, you might be able to pick a different approach to that industry, but probably doing it the way you're doing it isn't going to get you what you want. I think everybody needs to look at their businesses that way. They have to basically say, look at, what do you want? Like, what are you trying to accomplish? Why are you building this business? The business is there to make you money, not to take up your time and not to take up, and not for you to support other people's families because they're employees and all that. Like all that stuff that we all get busy with in our businesses, that's not what the business is for. The business is there to make you money. And if the potential of that business, just because of this business model, is not likely or possible even to get you there, then you need to shift gears and do something else. Pick something. You've got to at least make it work on paper. I've done that multiple times within the businesses that I have. I just did this. I did have something that was taking up a lot of my time. I was generating, probably 30 grand a month on 15 hours a week kind of situation. But that was a distraction to me for what I'm moving on and working on now. And so I gave that up because it wasn't getting me to where I needed to go. It wasn't going to help me move the needle on the new model and the new thing that I'm working on. So you have to let it go. You've probably heard that saying where you say, what's the saying? The saying is you got to let go of the dollar in your hand so you can pick up the $100. It's that sort of situation. Sometimes people will grasp so hard at the dollar that they have in their hand. Sometimes you just have to let it go so you can focus and put the energy to pick up the $100 or to pick up the $1,000 or whatever the case may be. So focus has a lot to do with what you're talking about. All right, next question. Belinda Wood. How did you narrow in on one business to build when in the beginning you might be doing a few and you also know that someday there's even something else that you want to do long term? I am involved in quite a few things to make a living now, like divorce coaching, small business coaching, real estate, and I don't really have a team and I feel a little lack of focus. Should I go all in one thing or dabble in a few, and what are the pros and cons? Okay, so I love dabbling in things because I like to learn a lot of things. I like to be involved in a lot of things. I think it's great. But you do need to focus. If you want, again, it depends on what you're trying to accomplish. I guess if you're trying to accomplish being involved in a bunch of different things and you're happy with the money you're making doing that, great. If you've set a financial goal for yourself, or you've set a time commitment goal, like maybe you say, well I'm not focused and I'm all over the place and I'm spending 60 hours a week working and I don't like it, but I'm okay with the money, then it's just a factor of, cool, let's figure out how to keep the same money and then reduce the hours. So you focus on the attention's more on how many hours are you spending and how much dollars do you make per hour, I guess, basically. Yeah, it sounds like you're all over the place. If you want to focus, or you would need to focus in order to either raise your income and or change your lifestyle, change the amount of time you're putting in on everything. And I think both of those are worth thinking about. Again, in my experience, being laser focused on what your objective is and trying not to get distracted by other things, that's the name of the game. That's if you're trying to scale a business, you're trying to grow a business, or you're trying to start a business, that's the thing. All these little items that you kind of make money from, they're not really helping you. They're actually, from an opportunity cost, they're actually costing you a lot of money. Like, sure, you made money over here on the small business coaching, or you made a little money over here on the divorce coaching, but what was the opportunity cost by bouncing around like that? And, for those of you who haven't heard the term opportunity cost is what could you have made otherwise had you done something else, had you made a different choice? How much money could you have made doing something else? So that's always worth looking at. Yeah, I was disappointed the first time somebody told me that I needed focus in business, because I really like not focusing. But it really is true. Picking something and moving in that direction is the way to go. All right, next question. Kimberly Benjamin. What tools and routes can I use to stay ultra focused for my business? Boy, that's like a theme. I have always been a hard worker, hustler mentality, but now I'm about to begin going all in on one niche, one product. How can I stay focused? What tools or ideas can you share to help me stay very focused on the sales and operations of my new business? And I see tremendous potential. Thanks. Well, let me think about it for myself. How do I stay focused? Well, one of the things, the games that I've played with myself before, and you guys could do the same, is I actually charge myself when I do, like I can work, quote unquote, work for free on the thing that I want to be working on. So I can put as much time in on that as possible without, quote unquote, charging myself. But if I go off and do something else, as soon as I'm off thinking about something else that doesn't fit, or I'm going to actually apply time towards something that doesn't fit or isn't directly related to that thing, I actually attach a dollar amount to it, and I keep a list. I keep a list on my phone that basically says, on this date and this time between these 2 hours, I did this thing, which was a distraction, and my hourly rate is $500 an hour. So that going off and doing that thing cost me $1,000, and I actually keep a list like that, so I know what it's costing me. I put a dollar amount on it, and it could be $500 an hour, it could be $1,000, $2,000. I just $20, whatever you want to choose for that number. But that's a good way to kind of like keep yourself in check, to really think, do I need to pay for this because I'm spending my time off doing something I shouldn't be doing? Or do I just, is it okay? I'm investing my time in my own thing, the thing I've decided I want to be focused on. So that's kind of helped for me. Other than that, as like kind of a little tool, another good thing is, I know this is kind of like woo or whatever, I'm not a big fan of vision boards and all that stuff. Some people really like them. It's not really my thing. But I do have a few URLs on my bookmarks on my browser of some things that I think are cool. And I sometimes open those up and just look at them for a second if I feel like I'm getting distracted. Like if I'm getting distracted by like, oh, I should go over here, or like my mind's wandering, or I'm kind of all over the place, I'll use those items as a thing to remind myself, oh, yes, if I want this thing, I have to stay focused over here. So I kind of like use that as like a little reward in my brain of like, cool, if I want that thing, I have to stay focused over here. If I want to accomplish this, I have to stay focused over here. So that's another one that I do. Okay, last one. Lysandra Wilson. What things can I do to keep thinking bigger and build a business bigger than just myself and my husband? I have a baking business and specialize in custom cakes and dessert tables. It's mostly me and my husband, and I really want to grow and build something. Would love to know what you did to build what you built, and some things I can do to break through these limited mindset beliefs. So, I mean, I can only talk from my own perspective. And I understand the idea of limiting mindset, because we all have them. We all have a number. We all have a scale in which we're comfortable with immediately. One of the ways that I kind of break through that is, and those of you who know me know this, I go right to a spreadsheet and I start modeling out the bigger thing. If it was bigger, what would it look like on a spreadsheet in terms of numbers? What would our P&L look like? What would our balance sheet look like? Start modeling that stuff out at a larger scale. Just put bigger numbers on it and then kind of work backwards from there. Because if I can model it out and I can say, this is what I'm doing, now I can start to work backwards and say, okay, if I'm going to reach those goals, how much investment do I need? How many employees am I going to need? How, is this even a good business anymore? Going back to the idea of maybe this business I'm in isn't going to scale the way that I want it to be able to accomplish whatever it is I'm trying to do. So whenever I'm evaluating an opportunity, I'm evaluating it from the perspective of, is this thing, can I model it out on a spreadsheet, on paper first? Does it make sense there? And you should be doing that in your business all the time. Even like if it's not the whole business you're looking at, people often don't do this enough with like top of the funnel lead gen and marketing stuff. A lot of times they just start throwing money at marketing and everything, and they don't really do the calculations like, is this going to produce anything of value at all? Like if I'm going to pay $10,000 for a print ad, but my product is only a $50 item that I make $20 on, am I going to be able to sell $10,000 worth of stuff? Does that make sense? Like, does just from like a logic perspective, there's only so many viewers of this print ad. How many of them are actually going to buy this based on looking at this thing, if any, right? There's a whole other discussion if print ads are valuable or not, but you know what I'm saying. 100% of them aren't going to buy because they saw this print ad. So if there's 100,000 viewers, what percentage of them is going to buy? And then if they all buy that based on that percentage at $20, does that equal more than the ad that I paid? That's the question. So doing those calculations, whether it's the whole entire business, does it financially make sense, or whether it's little components of the business, does it make sense? You should always be doing those calculations. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. If you don't know how to use spreadsheets, go online and Google or go on YouTube and say, spreadsheet tutorial. How do I do spreadsheet? Like, how do I use formulas and stuff? Start doing it. Start using it. Because it's basically just a big calculator where you can see all your calculations and you can change them and then everything updates. It's just a big calculator. the power of being able to do that and build that model like that for all sorts of different scenarios is super important. Doesn't take any cost. It's just the time and effort to do it, and it's not particularly hard. Once you kind of get the hang of it, it's very easy. Actually, it's very straightforward. Okay, I guess that's it. Thanks very much, everyone. Good to see you all, and we'll see you again next time.